Galaxy Audio presents Spy Killer by L. Ron Hubbard. Chapter 1. Dangerous Woman. The water was black, and the swim was long. But when a man is faced with death, he does not consider odds. Kurt Reid went over the side of the tanker Rangoon in a clean dive, cleaving the swirling, dark surface of the Huangpu. The strong current swept him downriver toward the gaily lighted Bund. He did not want to go there. He knew that authorities would be after him like baying hounds before the night was out. A shadow came between his half-immersed head and the glow. A sampan was sailing quietly through the gloom, its sculling oar stirring the thick black river. Kurt Reid gripped the gunwale and slid himself over to the deck. The boatman stared at him with shuddering terror. Was this some devil come to life from the stream's depths?
Hey!
Kurt Reid was not too tired to grin. He stood up, water cascading from his black clothes.
Put me ashore in the native city.
He ordered in the Shanghai dialect.
And chop!
The boatman shriveled up over his oar. His eyes were two saucers of white porcelain. Even his coolie coat sagged. He put the small craft about and drove it swiftly in toward the bank. Kurt Reid grinned back at the looming hulk of the Rangoon. He raised his hand in a mock salute and muttered,
"Get me if you can, gentlemen."
He turned then and faced the nearing shore. As he wrung the water from his clothes, he discarded his memories one by one. As mate of the Rangoon, he had been known as a bucko sailor, a hard case who struck first and questioned afterward, renowned for a temper as hot and swift as a glowing rapier. And the reputation had not helped him when the captain had been found dead in his cabin, and when it was discovered that the safe was open and empty. Kurt Reid had been the last man to see the captain alive, so they thought. Shanghai stretched before him, and behind it lay all of China. If he could not escape there, he thought, he deserved to die. His only regret now was the lack of money he had been accused of stealing. A man does not go far on a few American dollars. But unlike most American mates, Kurt Reid had been raised in the Orient, and he knew the Yellow Countries and their languages. Although his quick temper had earned his many enemies among the Japanese and Chinese, he hoped to avoid them. By now, several men would be advised of his arrest, and before morning, his escape would also be known. Many men would think that excellent news, and hope that his apprehension would be speedy. If necessary, he could assume one disguise or another. His eyes were the color of midnight, and his hair was even blacker, and the pallor of his face could be easily made saffron. The sampan rasped against a float, and Kurt Reid, throwing a coin to the boatman, stepped ashore into the din of the native city. Rickshaws clanged. Vendors yowled their wares. Jugglers threw tops high into the air and made them scream. Silk gowns rubbed against cotton gowns. Scabby slippers stubbed over jeweled shoes. The crowds in the curving streets blended into the democracy of China. Kurt Reid, head and shoulders above the rest, shoved his way toward a tea house. There, he supposed he could dry his clothing and get himself a drink or two. Confidently, he picked his way, looking neither to the right or the left, paying little heed to those who stopped to stare at this black-clothed giant who left the cobblestones spotted with his dripping passage. The tea house was set a little apart from the other structures which hung flimsily over the street. The tea house had curving corners to foil the devils, and a floating banner or two in red letters, and a whole row of paper lanterns. Kurt entered and rolled back the clouds of blue smoke which hung between ceiling and floor. Black caps bobbed, gowns rustled. Teacups remained suspended for seconds. Kurt went to the back of the room and found the round-faced, slit-eyed proprietor.
"I want to dry my clothes. I fell into the river."
The man opened up a small cubicle at the rear, clapped his hands sharply, and presently a charcoal brazier was placed on the floor. Kurt shut the door and disrobed, hanging his black flannel shirt and his bell-bottom pants over a bench to dry. Tea was brought, but he waved it aside in favor of hot rice wine. The clothes began to steam, and the rice wine took the chill from his body. All unsuspecting and feeling at ease, Kurt began to plan ways and means of getting into the interior and away from possible arrest. If he could buy a gown from this Chinese, and perhaps a few other things, everything would be all right. He could join some party of merchants and get away. But his plans were for nothing. His clothing was soon dry, and he dressed again, feeling cheered and optimistic. He clapped his hands for the proprietor, and when that worthy came, Kurt was startled by a woman who sat with her back to the wall, staring out into the milling street. Kurt slipped a dollar bill into the proprietor's hand. He still studied the woman. She was obviously a Russian. Her face was flat, with high cheekbones, and her nostrils were broad. There was the slightest hint of a slant to her eyes. She wore a coat made of expensive fur, and a small fur hat sat rakishly on the side of her blonde head. It was not usual to find Russian women alone in the native city, especially Russian women who dressed so well.
Who is that?
Demanded Kurt. The Chinese inspected the girl as though he were seeing her for the first time.
Name Varinka Savischna.
He replied, stumbling over the unfamiliar vowels of the Russian name.
But a white woman in the native city?
Ah, Russian woman.
Grumbled the Chinese.
She brings trouble to me.
He looked at Kurt's lean body and handsome, inquisitive face, and then grinned. As though the thoughts of the two men were projected to her, Varinka Savischna turned slowly in her chair, placed her arm idly against the table, and tapped the toe of a fur-topped boot against the rough floor. The steam, which rose from her cup of tea, was not less elusive than the quality of her eyes. Casually, impersonally, she inspected the tall American. She drew a long cigarette from her pocket and inserted it languidly between her full scarlet lips. Kurt felt the magnetic pull of her personality, and he caught an uneasiness she did not display. She was signaling him somehow. He picked up a packet of Chinese matches from a table and went slowly toward her. Without a word, he lighted her cigarette. She touched a chair leg with her boot.
Sit down, American.
Kurt sat down. He had two thoughts in mind. This girl appeared rich, and she might be in trouble. If he could perform some small service for her, he might gain materially, as well appease the taste for chivalry which bubbled up inside him. Varinka looked quickly about her, and then leaned across the table, staring intently at him through the steam which flowed upward from her cup.
You do not belong here, American.
No, and neither do you.
My messenger is late. Perhaps you have a moment's time to do a small favor for Varinka, eh?
Perhaps.
This is a very important matter, American. If I can trust you to take a letter to... But then, how do I know that I can give you my confidence, eh?
Look at me and find out.
She drew a small envelope from her pocket and slid it face down across the board to him.
I cannot take this myself. I have been waiting here for one who could, but my messenger did not come. And if they have caught him, then perhaps you had better not stay with me too long. You understand, American? Tell this man that you have been of slight service to Varinka, and he will reward you.
If you're liable to be caught, let's get out of here.
No, there is too much.
She broke off with a startled gasp. Her eyes flew wide as she looked at the door. Kurt spun in his chair. Two men were there at the entrance looking over the room. They were both Chinese from the north, tall and bony-faced. They wore black suits which had a suggestion of a uniform. Their hands were thrust deep into their pockets, as though they held hidden guns. The pair saw Varinka, and their glance steadied on her. They came slowly through the crowded room. The Chinese, knowing what to expect, dived sideways out of the line of fire. Kurt was rising slowly from his chair.
No. Let them take me. Take the letter and go, while there is yet time.
The two men came on, skirting tables, eyes fastened upon the Russian girl. Kurt knew that he was in no position to involve himself in some political mess, but he was spoiling for a fight. He got it. Kurt stepped out away from the table as though about to leave the girl and make his escape. The Chinese on the right shifted his glance, hesitated, and then started after Kurt. The other man walked on toward Varinka. There was something horrible in the way the pair walked. Something which suggested an executioner's keen blade, or perhaps a firing squad. Kurt stopped. The Chinese came on. Kurt began to advance. The Chinese hesitated briefly and started to pull an automatic into view. With an ear-shattering yell, Kurt dived in toward the gun. The blunt muzzle swept up. Kurt's palm jabbed the slide back. The firing pin clicked a fraction of an inch from the cartridge. Kurt swung his right. The Chinese was lifted up a foot from the floor. Bent backward like a falling tree, the man crashed into a table and went down. The other man whirled about and whipped up his weapon. He fired, but the hand of Varinka was quicker than his trigger finger, and the shot furrowed the ceiling. Kurt stepped within 2 feet of the big Chinese and swung. The fist connected with a crack louder than a breaking staff. Kurt swung again, and the Chinese folded into himself with a grunt. Varinka ran toward the entrance. Kurt paused long enough to pocket the 2 automatics, and then he sped after her twinkling boots. They raced up the crowded street, Kurt spilling the crowd to the right and left as a cutter's bow cleaves water. They dashed down a dark alleyway and through a garden. Breathless, they paused in the shadow of a wall. The girl leaned her head back and peered up at the muddy sky. She was smiling.
When Lin Wang hears of this, how he'll pant for vengeance. The pick of his death squad knocked kicking by one man.
They didn't know how to box.
Said Kurt, embarrassed.
But they do. You, American, were glorious. But come, my fine white knight. Let me dispose of this letter another way. A block from here, I have another man. One I should have contacted first. Come.
They picked their way through the littered alley and soon came to a low door on which Varinka knocked. A small shaved head was thrust fearfully forth.
Ah, the white lady.
Sighed the Chinese with relief.
Tonight, Singh was taken and made to talk. We are no longer safe here. I waited another hour for your coming, against my will.
They made Singh talk?
Said Varinka, growing pale.
Then he is dead.
Aye, dead. Lin Wang's death squad strikes fast.
But here, take this letter to the commander. I have not proof of it, but he will do well to watch Lin Wang.
The commander left this for you.
Said the Chinese, handing out a slip of thin paper. The girl pocketed the order. The door slammed shut. Varinka led the puzzled Kurt down another alley.
You are in trouble. I might even guess who you are. Your name might be Kurt Reid.
He blinked at her.
On tonight, American, you found the cell door of the Rangoon mysteriously open?
Yes. How?
Never mind, American. Your destiny is written tonight. You can do one of 2 things. You can drift outward and try to lose yourself, which you cannot. Or you can try to be of service to me.
There's no decision to make. Whatever I can do...
Beware. Think not fast, American. I am a dangerous woman.
Kurt laughed at her and followed her through the gloom. Chapter 2. The Russian Disappears. Varinka Savischna took Kurt Reid through the back streets of Shanghai's native city to another garden. They entered through a small door and walked across meandering paths, past pools where stone storks stood in one-legged sorrow. Paper lanterns cast their gay reflection in the water and lit up well-tended beds of flowers. This was a spot of beauty in a squalid settlement, as unexpected as a warm house in the Arctic Circle. Through a broad black wood door, they entered a large, well-furnished room. The light was subdued, suggesting mysteries behind the walls and in the shadows. A thick oriental carpet softened their footsteps. Varinka made Kurt sit down in a long chair. She did not remove her coat. She looked about her with an air of worry.
She should be here.
Who? Varinka did not answer that. She sat down and studied Kurt.
You have a reputation, American. One that I might be able to use if things go well. We know of you here in Shanghai, and we know what happened to you. It will not be well for you to roam the streets of the city. Until I need you, I shall have to keep you hidden. One flare of temper, and whack, off goes your head.
You mean you...
No, not I. the authorities, and perhaps another. You must promise to stay here until I can tell you when to leave.
Maybe if you let me in on some of this, I could help you better.
No, I do not think I am at liberty to tell anyone.
I trusted you.
He reminded her.
But my secrets are not my own. There is much to be done, American. Things which are greater than ourselves.
If this has anything to do with Russia,
Began Kurt, suddenly waking up to the danger of his position.
You think that I am a Russian spy, huh? But no, I am a white Russian. This has to do with China and Japan. Great forces are at work. You will undoubtedly know of them soon enough.
Kurt sat forward. He smiled, displaying close-set teeth in a scimitar's arc.
I have nothing to do but escape. The reason I talked to you at the tea house is easily enough explained. I thought I could do something for you, and you could help me get out. But you seem to know more about the setup than I do. You seem to know more about me than my own mother. How is this?
We watch everything, American.
And who do you mean by we?
Varinka stood up suddenly. She touched his shoulder lightly.
You want escape. Perhaps that will come, too. But first, help me. Stay here until you are wanted. She will be here soon. You will wait for her.
Abruptly, she pulled back his head and gave him a hard kiss upon the mouth. Before he could voice his surprise, she stood halfway through another door.
I hope to see you soon, American.
She said and disappeared. He tried then to follow her, but he found that she had locked the door behind her. He tried another door, and it too was locked. Suddenly, something like panic came over him. He was a prisoner again, and although his captor was fair, and although he had no definite reasons for alarm, the late Briggs sentence had given him a taste for freedom he never again would forget. Kurt found that the windows had iron bars across them, though the bars were masked by carved sandalwood. He strode up and down the room. What a fool he was to let himself get taken in by a Ruski spy. Perhaps she was even then going for the police. And it would be Chinese police too, not American or British. The Rangoon was under Chinese nationalist registry.
Whack, and off goes your head.
He found a decanter and poured himself a drink. Then, peering into the glass, he decided that even a decanter could not be trusted. He set the drink down, untouched. Funny girl, that Russian. She had kept him from questioning her by the sheer force of her personality. She seemed to have some numbing power over him, which fell as tangible as a cloak. He felt angry at that. It didn't make him feel strong or masculine. And now he was trapped again, waiting for... What was he waiting for? What rubbish was that about China and Japan? Maybe this girl had a need of him. Maybe he was supposed to strong-arm for her in her work. Maybe she had had him released and had had him trailed to that tea house. And now that he thought about it, he had been released. Cell doors do not open by accident. And that sampan had been handy, too. But why should anyone take an interest in him? He wasn't anybody but a bucko mate off a coastwise tramp. Plenty of available white men could speak Chinese and Japanese and more dialects than he could. He sat down in the chair again, grinned, recovering his sense of humor. Here he was, and he didn't exactly mind after all. Hadn't the girl kissed him? Women didn't kiss you and then go find a guy who would cut off your head. Or did they? A light footstep brought him to his feet. A key grated in a lock, and the door swung inward. Kurt, who had been expecting the return of the Russian girl, gasped in surprise.
Anne Karsten,
exclaimed Kurt. The woman who entered was slender, well-poised, and very beautiful. Her hair was light brown, matching her eyes. Her face was aristocratic and well-molded. Her body was sheathed in a satin gown which whispered as she walked. She had the air of one who is born to command, but her eyes were kind and her smile was gentle. She gave Kurt her hands and looked at him for many seconds without speaking.
I have not seen you for 2 years, Kurt. Since that night you told me that you were just a bucko mate destined for the sea and left me so precipitately. Did I scare you badly, Kurt?
Surprise still held him motionless. His mind went back to a sailor's holiday when he had been invited to a gay social function in the concession. He had met this girl there, had met her amid the tinsel and pomp and dreamy music. Anne Karsten then had ruled the social world of Shanghai through the position of her merchant prince father, a man who had since died. Their interest in each other had been heightened by the romance of the night, until...
I could have given you so much,
said Anne accusingly.
I could have made you a king of captains. But you were frightened, weren't you?
Kurt laughed, embarrassed.
I didn't want to be known as Anne Karsten's husband. I wanted to be Mr. Reid, not Mr. Karsten.
You told me that I had been made for silk and spice, that I belonged in luxury, and that your path led through hardship, and that you wanted your woman to be as bold as yourself. Silly thoughts, weren't they? But then, it might have been the music.
Or your eyes. You're more beautiful than ever. I've thought about you.
You never gave me another thought. Don't lie for the sake of gallantry. How handsome you are, and how rugged. Then you were dressed in a tuxedo. I never suspected.
And now, I'm a hunted killer,
said Kurt with a twinge of bitterness, dropping her hands and stepping back as though his presence defiled her.
I heard about your father. I wanted to return and tell you.
And Karsten smiled again.
I see that you know my friend Varinka well. Look in the mirror.
Kurt wiped the back of his hand across his mouth. It came away smeared with lipstick. He had the good grace to blush.
Tell me, do you love this Varinka now?
No, I only met her tonight. How is it that she comes here?
She's my friend. An exotic creature, isn't she? So mysterious. I never know when she will come or when she will go. But she is my friend, and whatever her business, my home is hers. Are you sure you don't love her now?
I respect her nerve. But tell me what you're doing here, all alone in the native city.
One cannot live cheaply in the concession.
Is it that bad? I thought your father had a great deal of money.
He left little enough, Kurt, but somehow...
She moved closer to him and placed her hands on his shoulders. Her eyes searched his face for a full minute, and then, with a sigh, she placed her head on his broad chest. He realized then that she was tired and worried, but he could find no words with which to comfort her. His own worries were forgotten for the moment. Funny how their paths would cross again after 2 years. Then she had been so arrogant, so satisfied with her station. And now she lived in the native city, probably broke, away from her friends. She thrust herself away from him with a smile.
But then, you probably won't remember me tomorrow. You have Varinka to think about.
No, listen. Varinka doesn't mean anything to me. She's a Ruski. You don't marry Ruskis. And besides...
She laughed at his confusion and sank down in a long chair. However poor might be her pocketbook, she was rich in beauty and poise. Kurt felt a troubled stirring within him. He had come back to her, and soon he would have to go away. To cover the thought, he poured himself a drink and downed it.
I can't stay,
he said at length.
I'm outward bound. God knows where. They want me for a murder I didn't do.
But I thought that you would stay for a little while. You are safe here. No one would dare molest me. You look haggard, in need of a rest. I thought...
Kurt never knew what she thought. The great blackwood door rocked on its hinges, and thunder rolled through the room. Kurt froze. Anne Karsten stood up and motioned toward the door through which she had entered. The door shuttered, and Kurt rushed into the other room and looked about him. He realized with a shock that there was no exit, unless one of the panels moved. He tried to find a compressed spring, but from the outer room he heard voices. Anne Karsten had opened the door. Kurt stepped into a clothes press and tried not to breathe. If they knew he was here, then... A booming Chinese voice said,
You have here a Russian woman, Varinka Savischna. Where is she?
Anne Karsten's softer tones replied,
I know of no such woman. You must be mad.
You think to fool the death squad, my lady? Oh, never fear. We respect the women of the foreign devils, even when they are not in their concessions. But I must have this Russian.
There is no one here but myself.
I am sorry, but we must search.
Anne Karsten's voice was lost in the shrill babble of Chinese voices. From his place in the clothes press, Kurt saw men enter the bedroom. These men were not southern Chinese. They were immense northerners. They were all dressed in black, like so many oversized buzzards. They carried automatics in their hands and bayonets at their sides. Of the 6 men there, not one was less than 6 feet tall. Their eyes were flinty hard. The two approached the clothes press. Kurt braced himself for inevitable discovery. The two jerked back the fine gowns. Kurt, knowing that fighting was useless, nevertheless threw himself at them before they could set themselves. He rolled one back and sent the other reeling. He plunged out through the door and tried to get across the larger room. He had a vision of a massive face before him. He struck, but his knuckles received the only punishment. Men dived in from all sides and pinned Kurt down. The big one knelt on Kurt's chest and lifted his automatic for a blow. And Karsten screamed. Kurt tried to roll away. The big one thought better of it and stayed his hand. Kurt was helpless, and the others were swiftly binding him.
For your knowledge,
said this big one,
I am Yang Chu, captain of the death squad. Of course, you know why we are here, and you know what is about to happen to you. My master, Lin Wang, sees over all and allows no evil to escape. You are being taken to him. If I have bothered this lady of yours, I ask her pardon.
Yang stood up. He looked like some animated dark mountain. His arms and legs were as big as tree trunks, and his head sat oddly small on his great shoulders. But his head, on closer inspection, proved twice as large as an ordinary man's. Yang weighed 350 pounds, and none of it was fat. His expression was one of proud disdain. The 5 others showed cruelty, but not Yang. They picked Kurt up like so much straw and started out. And Karsten cried out to stop them. Yang turned to her with a respectful bow.
You cannot do this. He is an American. The United States.
We'll be very glad to have him, madam. He is a murderer.
And Karsten looked beseechingly at Yang, and finding no hope there, stared down at Kurt. She touched his face lightly with her fingers.
I hoped to see you again.
She was crying now. Kurt turned his face away. The death squad carried their burden through the garden and through the wall toward the headquarters of Lin Wang. Chapter 3. The Confession. When a man spends a month in jail, he is ready for anything, even murder. And murder was to be the task of Kurt Reid. The first week he spent worrying. No one came to see him, no one advised him of the exact nature of his arrest. He heard nothing of the 2 strange women who had indirectly caused his incarceration. A man can find a great deal to worry about when he is confronted with 4 yellowish walls and when the scurrying rats forbid his sleep. He was unable to pry information out of his black uniformed guard. In the second week, he began to suspect the Russian Varinka Savischna. At the end of 10 days, he received a short note via the one window of the cell.
Kurt Reid, I have tried to find out about your case, but I am afraid to take my information to the authorities, fearing that the affair aboard the Rangoon would also be brought against you. I have tried to bribe Lin Wang, but he will have nothing of it, saying that you are an enemy of China. If fate brings you back to me, I promise that our next meeting will be far better than the last. And Karsten.
There was some slight solace to that, and he found himself looking forward to seeing the girl if and when he ever got out. He began to dwell upon her beauty, upon the kindness of her eyes. He realized then that this was the girl he had always hoped to meet. His luck to meet her when he had to depart so abruptly, sailor's luck. He could not fathom Lin Wang's determination to keep him away from the Shanghai authorities. The fact was ominous. If Lin Wang merely wanted to do away with Kurt Reid, it would be more quickly done over the bar of justice. God knew that justice had enough against the bucko mate. He tried to piece together all he knew about Lin Wang, but that did him little good. Lin Wang was a general of high repute, shouting for China's freedom and waving flags and putting up a great show. China's traitors, so boasted Lin Wang, did not live long at the hands of his picked executioners, the Death Squad. Lin Wang had long called down the ancient curses upon the head of invading Japan. But Kurt Reid had no definite answer, and when the month was out, curiosity overcame the fear of his first meeting with Lin Wang. The soldiers in black came one morning and led him away. Between their files, he was not much to look upon. His clothes were dirty and worn. He needed a shave. His hair was long and unkempt, but he walked with erect head and something of arrogance in his stride. He was thrust through the door of a small hut and made to sit in a chair against the wall. Men passed ropes through his arms and about his body and lashed him there. For an hour he waited, and then, amid great clamor, the door was flung back and Lin Wang came in. One glance at the man sent a shudder of repulsion through Kurt. Lin Wang was small, hunched to one side with a twisted back. He did not seem to have any neck muscles. His head sat rigidly upon his shoulders, pulled to one side. His face was deeply pocked, covered with yellowish scales, which might come from some leprosy. Several great wrinkles lay like old scars against the cruel visage, like ravines in a relief map. The wrinkles were filled with ancient poisonous dirt. Lin Wang's hands were held up from his body as though he could not drop them. The fingers dangled limply, fleshless and thin, clattering nervelessly when Lin Wang moved. But the eyes were the worst. They were not black. They were an unhealthy mud-blue color, like bichloride of mercury. The lids were half lowered over the protruding pupils.
Kurt Reid, isn't it?
Said Lin Wang with a rattle in his voice. Kurt drew back a little and said nothing.
Oh, so you do not like to look at me. No one likes to look at Lin Wang. But for all my looks, women sometimes smile. Could you smile, bucko mate, watching a beheading sword?
I'm laughing out loud,
said Kurt, teeth displayed by his taut upper lip.
What do you want with me?
I will show you that. But first, allow me to ask you a question.
Lin Wang settled himself behind the crude desk and popped 3 black opium pills into his mouth, lowering his hands and letting the clattering fingers droop, eyeing Kurt with a twisted glance.
You are very good looking. The women, I presume, love a man as good looking as you. Perhaps Ann Carsten, for instance. I have a feeling that it might give me pleasure to spoil those handsome features of yours, Kurt Reid. But never mind. Perhaps that will come later.
What's the idea of bringing me here? You could have saved yourself the trouble by tipping off the officials over in the foreign concessions.
Ah, you refer to that incident aboard the Rangoon, eh? With regard to that, Kurt Reid, allow me to state that I have gone to no little trouble for you. I have solved the murder aboard the Rangoon.
What the hell?
You see? We might even be friends. But tell me, are you the Kurt Reid who spent his life here in China and Japan? Was your father a certain Frank Reid? A soldier of no little reputation.
That's right.
I had hoped that I would not be in error. Then you speak several dialects of Chinese and Japanese as well.
I do.
And you're the bucko mate with the quick temper.
I suppose so.
Very well,
said Lin Wang with an air of finality. He turned to the black-uniformed Yang, captain of the Death Squad.
Bring that seaman in here, Captain Yang.
Yang's great bulk filled the doorway as he went out. Presently, a hulking seaman was goaded through the door at the point of bayonets. The man was thick of body and small-headed. His face was unclean, and matted dark hair clung stickily to his half-naked body.
Bonner!
Exclaimed Kurt Reid, recognizing one of the Rangoon seamen.
Bonner is right. Then my men were not in error. I might mention, Kurt Reid, that I had a friend in the crew of the Rangoon who was willing to sell me this information at a price.
Bonner glowered at Lin Wang and then saw Kurt Reid. He growled a curse and said,
"What the hell do you want with me?"
Lin Wang smiled, and the chasms in his face opened. A thin scale dropped from his face, and he picked it up from the desk, breaking it with his fingernails.
Bonner, I believe you murdered the captain of the Rangoon and took a few things from the safe. My men found those things in your baggage when you jumped ship in Hong Kong.
So that's where they went. Well, listen, Yellow Belly.
I am doing the talking. If you care to give me a written confession, you can remain alive. Otherwise...
Go to hell!
Yang, pin his body in a chair and bring me a pair of pliers. Any pair of pliers will do.
Bonner swore, but strong hands bent him into the chair, and strong ropes held him down. He tried to twist free, but the black-uniformed men were stronger. The pliers came. Kurt Reid watched with wide-open eyes. Lin Wang rattled the metal in his shaking hand.
Spread out his fingers,
said Lin Wang, smiling. Yang spread the man's hand flat against the arm of the seat. Lin Wang's smile broadened. The muddy blue eyes lighted up. A desire of cruelty, heightened by the fact that he was a crossbreed between some unknown race and Chinese, made Lin Wang chuckle. The pliers swept down with a click and fastened upon Bonner's index fingernail. The pliers jerked back. Blood spouted. Lin Wang dropped the nail to the floor. Bonner writhed and turned white, moaning through set lips. Lin Wang ripped out another fingernail. Bonner screamed.
Will you sign that confession?
No!
The pliers came down slowly this time. Bonner flinched. Lin Wang smiled and jerked back. Once more the pliers descended.
I'll sign!
They unfastened his right hand and slid a board under his arm. They thrust a pen between his shaking fingers. From his left hand, blood dripped slowly to the floor. Bonner wrote what Lin Wang dictated.
I, George Bonner, do hereby confess to the murder of Captain Randolph for the purposes of robbery aboard the SS Rangoon off the coast of China. I murdered Captain Randolph with a belaying pin, crushing his skull. Found the combination to the safe among his papers and extracted the loot. On request, the money and certificates are waiting at the shop of Lloyd Chung, Nanking Road. Signed, George Bonner. Witness, Yang Chiu.
Lin Wang read the paper over, watched by Bonner's pain-deadened eyes.
You did kill him, didn't you?
Bonner gave him a sick nod. Lin Wang reached into his desk and extracted a German automatic pistol.
Any prayers, my good Bonner?
Jesus! You're not going to...
The concussion of the shot boomed through the small room. Blue smoke eddied about Bonner's chair. Lin Wang fired again. Bonner slumped, a bullet between his eyes.
Take him out,
said Lin Wang with an airy wave of his dangling hand. He blew the smoke out of the muzzle and placed the automatic back in his desk.
This confession is valid and perfectly satisfactory to authorities. Had I turned you over to them, they might have cleared you, and that would have been that. But now, Kurt Reid...
What's your game?
Game? That suggests hunting, doesn't it? Then, Kurt Reid, you are going hunting.
You're insane.
Of course. I find it most pleasant. You are supposed to be a fighter, and you can get by where a Chinese could not. This confession I keep here with me, in my jacket. When you have killed your game, bring back its scalp, and you shall have the confession.
You mean I've got to buy that with murder?
Precisely, Kurt Reid. You are a very intelligent gentleman, I must say. I shall make very sure that you do not escape. In fact, I shall lend you Captain Yang Chu and 6 members of the Death Squad. I choose you because you may escape unscathed in the Japanese lines. Yes, the Japanese lines. You are to proceed to Kalgan on the Great Wall. There, find one they call Takeki the Courageous, a notorious spy, very harmful to the peace of China, one who is responsible for much of this autonomy move. You will kill this Takeki. And when you have brought me evidence that you have done so, you shall have this confession. Then you will be a free man. But if you do not kill this Takeki, through Captain Yang, I will inform the authorities where you may be apprehended, and I shall have men appear at your trial as witnesses against you, thereby making it certain that you die a criminal. There is no escape for you. And if you go too wrong in this, you saw what happened to this man Bonner. Perhaps I would not trust the authorities. But, however that may be, Kurt Reid, kill Takeki, and you are a free man.
So that's why you did all this?
Of course. But do not make the mistake of thinking that this Takeki is anything less than a demon. He may try you very much before you finish with him. My own men could not approach him at all, but you, as a white man speaking their language, should be able to do it and escape. I might remind you, Kurt Reid, that something of the fate of China rests on your shoulders.
You went far enough around to put it there. All right, I'll try it. Let me up from here.
Captain Yang unlashed him and pulled him to his feet. Although Kurt was tall, Captain Yang loomed over him like a mountain, which has a summer house at its summit. Captain Yang said,
I think we will have a very enjoyable trip, bucko mate.
Chapter 4. Danger in Kalgan. It was a very different-looking Kurt Reid who arrived one night on the Peking-Suyan Railway in Kalgan. He stepped from the train in the company of a gigantic merchant who had 6 servants unload their baggage. Kurt Reid was dressed in a well-tailored dark suit and wore a pearl gray hat. He was clean-shaved again and looked as much unlike the bucko mate as had the prisoner of Lin Wang. His clear black eyes searched through the crowd, as do those of men about to hang, and he found no friendship or promise of rescue. Yang Chu nudged him as a signal to move along. They picked their way through littered streets toward a small hotel. Japanese soldiers were in evidence everywhere, dressed in mustard-colored uniforms. Officers marked by red cap bands. Guards with fixed bayonets stood before many entrances. Japan was about to take over North China, and Kalgan, near the Great Wall, was the jumping-off place. Kurt Reid felt very tired and down in the mouth. He had been unable to locate Anne Karsten in Shanghai, although he had tried his best to find her at the risk of his own liberty. And he had approached the puzzle of Lin Wang's move no further. On the surface, it would appear that Lin Wang was fighting to retain North China. And to do so, Lin Wang considered it vital that this Takeki person, supposed to be a Japanese spy, be killed. But the closer Kurt Reid came to it, the more convinced he was that killing a Japanese spy in the Japanese lines was an impossibility. But with that confession of Bonner's as a lure, and with Yang here beside him, Kurt knew he would try. As they rounded a corner and pressed their way through a camel caravan which had stopped in the street, Kurt drew a sudden breath of surprise, causing Yang to look down at him quickly. Kurt walked on calmly enough, although he was certain that he had seen a familiar face in the crowd. Maybe all white Russians looked alike, and maybe there was more than one fur hat and coat like that in China, but something more than sight had given him his information. Varinka Savischna was here. He had seen her entering a shop. That bothered him more than a little, and heartened him a great deal. On one hand, he hated to see Varinka in a Japanese town, but on the other, her presence might be an omen of good luck. If he could see her, maybe he would be able to find out where this Takeki might be found. With springier stride, he followed Yang into the hotel and registered. The 6 servants, hiding their warlike faces under their hats, made their way back to the lesser ground floor quarters. Kurt's room was a small affair, boasting only a bed and a chair and a picture of the Mikado, put up by the hotel keeper, doubtless, to show Japan that he had their cause at heart. Yang had gone to his own room, and for a moment Kurt fondled the idea of getting out and away. But when he looked down into the street, he saw one of the 6 slowly puffing a cigarette at the hotel entrance. The man was armed, and even though a street fight might give away their identity, these guards knew what to expect from Lin Wang as the price of failure. A man in a blue gown thrust his head into the doorway and said,
Everything all right, sir?
Yes, quite all right.
But the small, yellow-faced man did not go away. He entered and patted the bedspread smooth and adjusted the pillow.
Anything I might tell the gentleman?
No.
Pardoning, Your Honor, but this one is a good guide. He knows all things.
Kurt studied the man for a moment and then said,
You can tell me something, if you promise to forget the question immediately. Where can I find this one known as Takeki?
The other shook his head.
I do not know.
He went out. Kurt stretched himself on the bed and thought for a long time. He wondered how he was going to find this Japanese spy in the first place. Perhaps the spy would come to see him. That was a plan. If Kurt let it be known that he had some vital information about South China, the spy might present himself. Distasteful as the job was, it had to be done. He wondered for a long time why Varinka was here, and how he could find her again. But then Calgon was not so big, and Varinka's exotic beauty was easily spotted in an oriental crowd. Odd that he had crossed her track again. His ponderings were interrupted by a knock on the door. Without knowing quite why he did so, Kurt glanced out of the window and saw that the guard was gone. He opened the door and fell back. A Japanese officer and a squad of infantrymen blocked the passage. Their dark faces were set in a military glower, and their caps sat precisely upon the tops of their heads. Their blued bayonets shimmered dully. The officer said,
You are under arrest. Quietly come with us.
No man is fool enough to launch himself against 8 bayonets. Kurt picked up his hat, set it on the back of his head, and fell in between the files. Yang burst out of his room and stood gaping at the squad. Then, startling in his iron face, 2 great tears welled up out of his eyes and ran down his cheeks. Yang was an excellent actor. Yang fell upon Kurt and wept loudly.
You do not take him, Taicho. He is my friend.
Wailed Yang, shaking like a mountain in an earthquake. But under cover of the sobs, he whispered in a voice like a saw.
Keep your mouth shut, fool. Killing will be too good for you.
The captain pried Yang away and pushed him back against the wall. Yang submitted tearfully, and Kurt was led away. The squad marched him through the crowded street. People paused to stare and point. Little children, faces round and mouths filled with jeers, ran on either side of the files.
It is some great traitor.
Great traitor.
Ran the whisper.
They are going to execute him.
Kurt watched the cloth shoes going up and down on either side of him. He was unable to account for this sudden turn of events, and he looked bleakly ahead to even a worse fate than that promised by Yang. They went into a big stone house which served as Japanese headquarters, and Kurt was left standing before a rough desk. The man who sat there was small and wiry. His eyes were hidden behind plate glass spectacles, which made him look like a submarine monster. His hair stood straight up, like a pig bristle brush. Kurt saw another beside the desk, a small man in a blue gown. the man he had taken for a bellhop at the hotel.
Is this the man?
Said the officer at the desk.
Yes, sir. He asked me about Tekeki, sir.
The officer nodded and peered nearsightedly at Kurt.
Why did you ask that question? What is your name?
My name is Smith. I was merely curious, that is all.
Please do not lie to me,
said the officer, rubbing his hands thoughtfully together.
Your name is Kurt Reid. Now, go on.
Kurt blinked. It seemed that he was fated to be known mysteriously by everyone. How had this information come to this Japanese headquarters?
Why, yes, so it is. But I was still curious about Tekeki. I have some information for him.
For him? Ah, well, you can give it to me.
Only to Tekeki.
You're obstinate. Ah, well. Taicho, take this man back to the cells.
And to Kurt,
if Takeki comes, perhaps you will be able to give your information firsthand. If not...
The officer shrugged and went back to work. Kurt fell into the files again and was presently thrust into a barred enclosure, which resembled a jail less than a wild animal cage. He was the only prisoner there. The door clanged, and Kurt was again left to his thoughts. At first, he was very angry. He stomped up and down the paved floor, swearing and kicking at the bars. But at last, his anger burned itself out, and he sat down on a bench.
One jail after another. I should have let him hang me the first time.
He grinned at that and stretched out, glad to have a few hours' sleep away from the scrutiny of Yang and the 6 members of the death squad. After what seemed a minute or two, but which was really 6 hours, Kurt was awakened by the slither of a rope into the enclosure. He propped himself up on one elbow and stared about him, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He was cold, and the bench had bitten deeply into his hard body. But he had the feeling that something was wrong, and he came alert in an instant. He saw stars over him, and noticed for the first time that the enclosure had no roof. The bars were bent into hooks at the top to discourage anyone from climbing out. Next, he saw a long, snake-like thing which made him jump. He touched it in the darkness and found that it was a rope. Puzzled and holding his breath, he stood up. A scraping sound came from the top of the bars, and presently Kurt saw a man outlined against the sky. Slowly the man began to descend. Until it was too late, Kurt thought that Varinka had located him and was about to engineer his escape. He stood by until the hazily seen Chinese was firmly on the floor. A knife glittered in the stranger's hand. The Chinese took a step toward Kurt.
Captain Yang,
said the guard in a low voice,
has passed the sentence upon you. You have failed Lin Wang. You are no further use to him. I am a member of the death squad.
The man dived in and the knife came down. Kurt was rocked back. The bars creaked as they were struck. Kurt caught the knife wrist and pried it back. He had been too startled to cry out, and now he needed all his breath. The garlic-reeking mouth of the Chinese was close to Kurt's face. The man was trying to bring up his knees for a numbing blow. Kurt drove in his right fist and heard it crunch against a bone. The Chinese gave ground slowly. Kurt pushed up with all his might, striving to keep back the knife. But he was dealing with a man who had fought with steel his whole life. The arm went limp. Kurt was thrown off his balance. He let go the wrist for a fraction of a second. The knife came down with vicious strength. Kurt lurched back, deflecting the blade by making it hit his shoulder broadside. He doubled up and dropped to the floor. The Chinese attempted to pin Kurt down, but Kurt suddenly exploded. On top of the Chinese, Kurt secured the dagger hand with his knee. And then, with both hands, Kurt raised the close-shaven head and slammed it back to the concrete. Once, twice. The third time, the head did not bounce. The man's eyes rolled far up into his head. A sticky smear of blood stained the concrete black in the starlight. Kurt stood up and rubbed his sleeve across his forehead. He felt drained and shaking. One slip, and he would be lying there instead of the Chinese. Abruptly, he remembered that other members of the death squad might be waiting outside.
Guard! Mamori!
The rope had looked inviting until he thought about Yang. Now, a barred enclosure was just the thing. Doors slammed, men came running, rifles clanking. Flashlights stabbed through the bars. Japanese entered and looked down at the Chinese and then at Kurt.
He tried to kill me.
But how did he get in?
Demanded an officer. Kurt pointed to the rope.
Who was he?
Kurt thought it best to be discreet on that point.
A man who thought I had wronged him.
That's likely,
said the officer with a grunt.
He would hate very well to make an attempt on your life in here.
The men started to go away, taking the dead man with them.
Wait a minute. I'm not gonna stay in here.
Why not?
The man might have friends.
All right, come into the guardroom, the sumesho.
That suited Kurt very well, and he was escorted out of the enclosure and ordered to sit down along the wall beside a small heater. The soldiers there looked curiously at him. When the officer had gone, a small fellow with a pale face and a scholarly air said politely,
How do you do?
In English. It was probably all that he knew. In Japanese, the others began to talk about Kurt and wonder why he was there. Their conversation continued for a half hour and was of a very personal and critical nature. They discussed how pale Kurt was and how big, and said that he must be a very great thief, because all foreign devils were great thieves. Kurt listened to them with a blank face for a while. Their inquisitiveness made him forget Varinka and Ann Karsten and Lin Wang. He began to cheer up. In Japanese, Kurt said,
Would you mind getting me a glass of water, Tomodachi?
The scholarly little man leaped up in surprise and scurried to the skin bag which hung in the corner. He came back with a drink.
Thank you,
said Kurt, drinking.
Tell me, Tomodachi, is it a crime here in Calgon to speak of Takeki?
The scholarly one shook his head.
No, but it is dangerous. Takeki is one we call the courageous. I cannot say any more. Is that why you are here?
I merely wanted to see Takeki. I had some information for him.
For him?
Said the soldiers all together. The officer had said that. Kurt thought it queer. He decided not to talk about Takeki. A larger Japanese with rugged features, almost Western, said in a complimentary tone,
That was a good job you did on that Chinese one. He looked very strong. Why did he go in there to attack you?
He didn't like me.
All these Chinese are fools,
said the scholarly one.
For a long time we left them alone and did nothing to them. For centuries. They tried to take our country from us twice, and now, when we merely want to police theirs and wipe out some of their so-called warlords, such as Lin Wang, the whole world cries against it. It is very strange. I cannot understand it at all.
They think you are trying to capture China.
No, that isn't what they think,
said the big one.
They are afraid of us. It would be a good thing if someone took over China and made a nation out of it and cut down this killing and made the people behave. All Chinese are fools. The world is afraid that Japan will grow powerful if Japan has China's manpower. Perhaps it will. Can you blame Japan for trying?
Kurt nodded. He could see the Japanese side of things, and he had no particular political views. Japan and China were farthest from his worries at that minute. He was thinking furiously about that confession. He would have to get it somehow. He couldn't run away from the law the rest of his life. Maybe if he explained to Yang. A door swung open and a voice said,
Foreigner, Takeki is waiting to speak with you.
Kurt got to his feet. He was about to face the man he had been sent to kill. He wondered what he would say to the Japanese. He walked slowly out into the other room and stared across the desks.
There is Takeki, foreigner,
said the officer again. Kurt swallowed hard. He was staring at Varinka Savischna. Chapter 5. The Japanese Spy. It took a moment or two for Kurt Reid to recover from his surprise, but his silence was unnoticed. Varinka Savischna came forward, holding out her hands to him, smiling.
My dear Kurt, I am surprised, but very glad to see you. I hope these compatriots of mine did not cause you any inconvenience.
She was taller than the Japanese, and she carried herself with a conscious pride of beauty. Her beautiful, broad face was smiling. Kurt took her hands. He could do nothing else.
I didn't know that you...
And what news do you bring me from the south?
She said, interrupting him. Kurt glanced at the Japanese. They eyed him with a suspicion of hostility.
Nothing of any moment, Varinka.
But certainly you must have something to come so far to find me.
Oh, yes. Perhaps you'd be interested to know that Lin Wang... But then I would feel better if I could impart this information to you privately.
Of course. I have a car outside, and I am living a short distance away. You are probably hungry, and you must come with me to get something to eat. We can talk then.
Kurt felt the leadened silence of the room. He felt very uncomfortable. He could feel the thoughts of the Japanese. They were not at all sure of him, those fellows, and he knew they were telling themselves that they would keep their eye on him. He felt a chill run up and down his spine when a soldier clattered his rifle against the wall. The brown eyes stabbed him. Death and danger were heavy in the room. Varinka did not seem to notice it. Her fur-topped boots whispered over the hard floor as she led Kurt out to the waiting car. 3 sentries, carrying their rifles in their hands, swung onto the running board. Kurt felt that he was under arrest. A cold wind was sweeping across the dead brown hills, stirring up dust through the blackness. Calgon was silent and without lights. It slept uneasily under the heel of its conqueror from across the yellow sea. They arrived at a small enclosure and went through a wide gate which was quickly clanged shut behind them. The sound had a finality to it which Kurt did not like. The guards dropped to the cobblestones of the courtyard. Kurt looked about to see that this house, like most Chinese houses, was built in 3 separate huts, each one serving a different purpose. The gray stone walls reminded him of a prison, but the furnishings of the room into which he was led belied the exterior. Fine silks were draped along the walls. Colorful cushions were strewn about the border of a tan and black carpet. A fire was crackling cheerfully in the fireplace. The heavy odor of Russian incense, far too sweet, caught in Kurt's throat. Varinka threw off her coat and tossed the cap aside. She sat down on a cushion and placed her left hand on the floor for support. She smiled at Kurt. The 3 guards were outside somewhere, walking back and forth, feet resonant upon the stones. A black-gowned Amma came in, bowed, saw that Varinka had a guest, and quickly went away. She returned in a moment with excellent whiskey and a tray of food, which she placed on a chow bench. Kurt ate slowly, watching Varinka, and listening to the footsteps of the guard. Finally, he said,
"This is rotten business."
Varinka shrugged.
One has to live.
You mean you're a spy for these yellow devils? You mean you're willing to help them take over China? Not that I care what happens to China. But after all, the Japanese...
One has to live.
But to be guarded like this...
Those guards are there because the Japanese are suspicious of you, Kurt. You have no official status here.
She paused as though unwilling to say more. Then, with a glance up at the small window, she leaned closer to him and lowered her voice.
I'm afraid they think that a spy can never tell who his friends and enemies are.
He caught a glimpse of fear in her eyes when she said that, but the expression was instantly gone.
Tell me what happened to you,
she said, lighting a long cigarette. Kurt snorted.
They picked me up after you left the house. Lin Wang's men, I mean. Lin Wang has a confession waiting for me in Shanghai, and if...
The food gagged him suddenly. He realized then that this Takeki and Varinka were one and the same person. He had been sent to Calgon to kill Varinka, and if he did not kill her, his own life was forfeit. But then, hadn't one of Yang's men tried to kill him? Wasn't that bond absolved? But still, the confession was in the hands of Lin Wang, and Lin Wang had ordered this thing to be done.
What's the matter?
Said Varinka, suddenly.
You're white as a ghost.
She moved closer to him.
Are you ill?
No.
Then go on. Tell me.
Kurt hid his face behind a large drink of the whiskey. You can't tell a person that you have been sent to kill them.
He sent me north, told me to leave China.
She did not believe him, but neither did she question him. She merely said,
Funny thing for Lin Wang to do. He usually uses his death squad.
But I was glad you got away,
said Kurt, feeling very uneasy.
Never worry about me. There's a panel, and a secret staircase, and another door in that house in the native city.
I still can't figure out about my escape, though.
Varinka laughed at him and hugged her knees.
I knew that you were to be let loose from the Rangoon, and so I placed a sampan near the ship so that you wouldn't have to swim ashore. You must have evaded the men Lin Wang sent to follow you, but my man picked you up and trailed you to the tea house. I waited there for you and my messenger. I needed a good, strong man I could trust, and I knew that Lin Wang wanted you for some purpose or other. I was going to steal his man from him.
What did you want me for?
I don't trust Chinese, much less Japanese. I thought you would be able to help me, and I knew I could help you. I had an idea that I could prove you innocent, and you had such a reputation as a fighter and as a linguist. I thought it a shame to let such material run around loose. And maybe, I was just being kind. I don't know. It amused me. Tell me, Kurt, did you see Aunt Karsten there?
Why, yes, of course.
And for some reason he could not define, he felt himself crimson.
Ah, so you did meet her, eh? A fine woman, isn't she? So young to be living alone in the native city. She must have taken quite a fancy to you from the way you look. She is always taken with sailors.
Wait a minute. I think she's a swell kid.
Varinka laughed delightedly.
Then you love her, eh?
No, of course not.
Why, of course not, so very gruff. Would that be impossible? Tell me, Kurt, if you were to choose between us, which one would you take?
He crimsoned again.
An unfair question.
Oh, but never mind. Aunt Karsten has such a hard time of it. You know, her father died in Shanghai 6 months ago. Did you know that? It was said that the death squad had some little thing to do with it. Karsten was far too interested in Chinese politics.
The poor kid. What happened?
Why, her father was a merchant prince. And he thought Lin Wang shouldn't have so much responsibility. He died for it, that's all. Lin Wang is a devil.
Kurt agreed with her there. Once again, he saw the horrible nightmare of the man's scaly face, the dirt-grimed wrinkles, the limply hanging and clattering hands, the hunched back. But the mention of Lin Wang brought something else to him. Lin Wang held liberty in his shaking hands. Lin Wang had sent Kurt Reid to Calgon to kill one named Takeki the Courageous, who was also known as Varinka Savischna.
You are very thoughtful. What is wrong?
If the Japanese guessed his mission there, Kurt knew that sudden death would be the mildest of fates. Suddenly, a gunshot roared outside, blasting through the night. Feet clattered over the cobblestones. Shrill Japanese voices cried out. In one motion, Kurt swept Varinka back against the wall and knocked over the lamp, bringing darkness to the room. Varinka gasped. Kurt felt her under his hand, and the treacherous thought that he could kill her easily now made him shudder. The glass crashed from the window, and something thumped into the room. Another shot roared, and then the guards came back, swearing. Cautiously, Kurt fumbled about on the floor and discovered something which felt like a grenade. He picked it up as though it was hot, about ready to explode. Then he realized that it was a stone, with a paper tied around it. He knelt against the wall and undid the sheet. The fireplace flickered up for a moment, throwing Kurt's shadow hugely against the silken drapes. Varinka crawled toward him. In that sudden splash of light, Kurt made out the note. It was in English, and it said,
"We are waiting. Death there will cancel death here."
Kurt crumpled up the note in his hand. Varinka's fingers tried to reach it, fingers which were suddenly strong. Kurt jerked the note away and threw it wildly toward the fireplace. The guards were coming in through the door.
What is wrong?
Bawled a Japanese. Varinka stood up and ordered Kurt to his feet. The other two guards came in, panting. They had been running.
What did you find outside?
The guard shook his head.
Nothing. Men climbed up on a roof across the street and threw something toward your window. Did anything land in here? They got away.
Varinka picked up the stone and looked at it. The twine which had held the note was still there. She looked long at Kurt. Taking in the situation, one of the guards looked about in front of the fireplace. He found the note lying a foot away from the flames. He spread it out on the hearth, kneeling there, rifle on the floor beside him.
I cannot read it. It is in English.
Varinka looked down at it and was about to pick it up. An officer came from nowhere and pushed her aside. He sent a thin, scornful glance at Varinka and took the note.
"I can read it,"
said the officer. He scanned the letters for a moment and then read them aloud. For a full minute, the room was silent. And then Varinka spun on Kurt, her fists clenched.
I understand now. You beast. I understand. You were sent here by Lin Wang to murder me. You want to kill me. And outside, Captain Yang is waiting for you to see that you do the job. And if you fail, he will murder you.
The officer gained in height. He slowly pulled his automatic from its holster and slid off the safety catch. His wiry hair bristled out from under his cap like an angry dog's.
No, we need not stain our hands with such as he. Captain Yang is waiting, Mr. Reid. He will be disappointed if you are late.
Kurt looked at the door and the square of blackness it embraced. He started to move away, but Varinka would not so easily let him go. She was upon him in an instant. She struck him with her right hand and then thrust him away from her.
You filthy beast! Get out! Get out!
Kurt turned on his heel, amazed, and went through the door. The Japanese officer laughed behind him. The guards raised their rifles hopefully. Kurt went on across the yard toward the gate. Captain Yang was waiting. Captain Yang had tried to kill him once, and now... He started through the entrance, staring bleakly at the dark, deserted street. From any corner, death might strike. Not until then did he notice that his jacket pocket was sagging. He put his hand inside and encountered an automatic pistol. Astounded, he fingered it, turning it over before his face. Suddenly he understood. He looked back toward the hut. Varinka Savischna had put that there. She had not sent him away unarmed. She had made him go because no chance was left at Japanese hands. He knew, standing there, already expecting the numbing shots of bullets through his back, that Varinka loved him and that he loved her.